Speaker.
I call the Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak to the Victims of Crime Reform Bill as a relatively recent member of the Justice and Electoral Select Committee. In fact, so recent that I was not on the Select Committee when this bill was first referred to it. I've only been on that committee for the best part of a year, perhaps less than that. But that points to one of the issues I do want to raise about this, and that is the tardiness with which this bill has come to the House. It was introduced in 2011, on the 18th of August 2011. It was then referred to the Justice and Electoral Select Committee, and the report was presented on the 27th of June 2012. So the committee took, I suppose, after the date of introduction, and then of course there was first reading. It sounds to me as if the Justice and Electoral Committee proceeded in a suitably thoughtful but timely way, as is the habit of the chairperson, to consider this bill. And then the report on it was presented on the 27th of June 2012. And here we are, 5th of March 2014. And what is it, I wonder, that has suddenly provoked the Minister of Justice into resurrecting this piece of legislation? Why has that suddenly become a priority when it hasn't been since the 27th of June 2012? Perhaps I do have a theory on this, as it happens. I do have a theory. I think it is more to do with knee-jerk reactions to polls than it is to do with anything else. I think it is also to do with the things that the Minister considers important, and she only considers them important when there have been dramatic and affecting headlines in the newspaper that would cause her to say, gosh, don't I have a bill about this somewhere in my back pocket? Perhaps it's time I brought it out, because we can get a lot of sympathy votes, if we start parading a piece of legislation that talks about the victims of crime. Now, I'm not wanting to detract from the merit of the bill at all. We support it. It has some very good measures about it, and as other legislation in this area has done, incrementally improves the response of our judicial system, our court processes, to the addressing of the needs of the victims of crime. But I do wonder if this government is ever motivated by anything other than cynicism. No. Anything other than simply putting their finger in the wind, trying to find out which way the polls are blowing, what are the critical issues, and then suddenly deciding, gosh, it's time we rescued this from the bottom of the order paper, because then we can make a fanfare about all the things that we have done for victims of crime. Well, one's inclined to say 5 long years about this, because this, in fact, comes out of work that was originally done by the Labor government in 2007, when the Select Committee then decided to do a review and inquiry into victims of crime and the assistance that they receive. And the National Party took that and made fun of it, boycotted its activities, poured scorn on it, and in fact has had the temerity to pull it out of the bag, out of Minister Collins' handbag, and present it now in advance of an election, simply so that, first of all, they can get a sympathy vote and support from people who have been victims of crime, and that is perhaps the worst form of cynicism that a government can display. And secondly, it can parade to the electorate that they are being strong on law and order, because somewhere one can bet one's bottom dollar, Mr. Speaker, that law and order is starting to emerge again on the National Party's polling radar as an issue of importance. And so that old chestnut, as my colleague says, is being trotted out once more in advance of an election. I wish things were not thus, but they are. And I have to say that the Minister of Justice in charge of this bill is probably the supreme master, second only to Nick Smith, I imagine, for escalating issues in response to polling and to some external driver, rather than anything internal like this is the right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, Nick Smith has only started to behave in his typically manic way around housing and housing affordability because it is high up on the National Party's polling radar. They know, finally, after 5 long years, they know that housing affordability is a critical issue. Well, this is getting the same litmus test as that. And that, while it is a shame that this is the kind of thing that motivates the government, can I say, as a newcomer, relative newcomer to the Justice and Electoral Select Committee, that I've had a look at the report of the Select Committee. I've had a look at the notes surrounding this bill, and we will support it because it does the kinds of things that we prepared the government to do right back in 2007. So, Mr. Speaker, introduction in 2011, 4 years on from the 2007 work of the Select Committee. Now, 2014, finally, it's coming to fruition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member Joanne Hayes. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe. I rise to support this bill because